Okay, lovely. So first up for us this afternoon, we've got Naomi. And Naomi is joining us from the Preparing for Adulthood team, and she's going
to try. I don't know if I've got his number, but
Oh, sorry, can we just put ourselves on mute, please? Sorry, we're hearing somebody's phone call. Lovely, thank you. Yeah, so Naomi's joining us from the Preparing for Adulthood team over at Nottinghamshire County Council, and she will tell us about some of the work they've been doing to review and look at changes within that service as well. So I'll hand you over to Naomi. Hi, Naomi.
Hi, Helen. Thanks very much for that introduction. Afternoon, everybody. Nice to see some faces that I recognise, but hello to those of you that I haven't met before. I've also got my colleague here, James Johnston. If you could just put your hand up, James, so people can see who you are. So James is actually the team manager of the Preparing for Adulthood team. I'm a group manager, and I've got a bit of a lead at the moment in terms of looking at some of our processes and the way that we're supporting people to prepare for adulthood. So I've got a short presentation, and then I don't know, Helen, whether you want to do questions at the end of my presentation, or whether you want to have all people doing presentations and then questions at the end of that.
Happy for questions to come straight after, Naomi, if that's all right with you.
Okay, no worries. So I will just share my screen with you. Okay. Can someone just tell me when I can see that?
Yeah, we've got that.
Yeah, lovely. Okay. So one of the things that we've been looking at over the past 6 months is that we did some work around our vision and our principles, and then looked at our pathway in 2016. And obviously that's quite out of date now. So we're looking at revising that work. So far we've got as far as the vision and the principles, and that this will all come within one piece of work that will also have a pathway in it that I'm going to talk to you about in a minute. So for the vision, we co-produced this with 3 schools. So we visited 3 schools and talked to roughly 30 young people. And we also spoke with the Parent Carers Forum, and Helen kindly sent out a questionnaire on carers space, which we had some good responses from as well, to input into this vision. So the vision that we've got is that we all want to live in a place we call home, with the people and things we love, in communities where we look out for one another, doing things that matter to us. At this important time of your life, we want you to get the right support to be the best that you can in adulthood. The first part of that vision comes from a national organisation called Social Care Futures, and they've developed a vision with people with lived experience, and we've used that, and we've just added a bit on the end about preparing for adulthood. So in terms of the principles that we want to be working to, we're going to listen to the views, wishes and feelings of children and young people. I'm not going to read absolutely every word because you can see it in front of you, but I'll briefly go through each one. We're going to look at the pathways into adulthood and make sure they're clear and accessible. We're going to ensure that communication is clear, consistent and honest. Have a personalised support offer that empowers children and young people to be ambitious and make informed choices about their future. And that also includes maximising opportunities to engage in employment where that's appropriate. We want to support children and young people to live as independently as possible. As agencies, we're committed to working closely together to develop a coordinated support offer. Respond to concerns about abuse and harm in a timely and person-centred way. So that's about how we'd respond to safeguarding concerns, and create co-production opportunities to develop, deliver and review services. So through the work that we did to co-produce that, that's what we've come up with as our vision and principles. In terms of some of the work that we've done recently outside of the pathway, We've recently established some internal monthly meetings to look at young people who are going to require accommodation. So this is some of the people with either who have got higher level needs and are going to require support, sort of 24-hour supported living, or young people where family situations are breaking down and we know that they're going to need to come into supported accommodation at the age of 18. So we're trying to work more closely with commissioning to predict some of those needs and to develop plans in the future. And at the moment, we've got over the next 3 to 5 years, but some of them will be ready earlier than that. But we've got a programme of supported living developments, some of which are specifically aimed at young people who are coming into adulthood. We've developed a dashboard, which is something that we can use to identify the young people that are starts at the age of 14, the young people that have got EHC plans, young people that have quite high numbers of short breaks. So we're trying to use it as a way of making sure that we know about all of the people that are potentially going to be coming into our service when they're 18, or obviously earlier with the PFA team. So they would come to the PFA team often around 16, 17 years old. The other thing that we're using that dashboard for, which is perhaps not quite so pertinent to today, but it does have an impact, is that we're trying to predict what resources we're going to need in the future. So it helps us to do something that we call predicted needs, which is a financial exercise, which means that we can roughly estimate how much we think that we're going to need to support somebody when they become an adult. And obviously that just helps us to plan for the future in terms of our finances. And we've had a task and finish group on employment, and they've developed an employment directory, which is available for staff liaising with external employers. And they're developing a guide to accessing employment opportunities, which will be available to everybody. We've got a forum with Nottingham City, which is focusing on supported internships. So there's a number of young people who will go from school to college, who will then go into a supported internship, which they're usually 1 to 2 years. And it's a way of somebody having quite good levels of support in work to then hopefully move on to paid employment in the future. So it's not my area of expertise. I haven't particularly been involved in that. So I hope my explanation made sense. And then we've also done a review of what is working and what isn't working in terms of our processes. So in terms of some of the things that we're going to be focusing on in the future. So I was saying to you that we've co-produced the vision and pathway for preparing for the vision and principles for preparing for adulthood. The next stage is that we are going to be looking at the preparing for adulthood pathway. So I don't know, there's a couple of places on the Send local offer where you can have a look at the current protocol and the current pathway for PFA. But as I said, this was done in 2016, so we really need to review this information. And what we've been asked to do by our senior leadership in terms of when we're reviewing that information is not just to do it as a paper exercise, not just a mapping exercise of we've got this and we've got that, but actually to really review quite rigorously whether those processes are working. And we've been fortunate to get a parent carer who's going to be supporting us with that work, and we're hoping to get a young person as well. We've still got to identify somebody. So we've liaised with one parent care organisation about getting some representation on the working groups, and we've got 4 people at the moment. But if there is anybody else from this group, from this carer space, who would like to be involved in any of the work we're doing around preparing for adulthood, we'd really welcome that. So please, if you could let Helen know, that'd be great, and she can let me know and have your contact details. The other things that we're working on at the moment are developing some ideas around things that came out of our review of what's working and what's not working. And we did some in-depth case study work about looking at some examples of people that are coming through the transitions process. So we're developing a proposal about supporting young people to develop their independence before, sorry, that's typo there, before they become 18. So at the moment in adults, we've got something called a maximising independence service, and it'll work with people on everything from travel training to supporting people how to cook, to identifying a voluntary job in the community. We have some of that support in children's, but not as much as we would like. So we're looking at proposing that we start that work earlier, from the age of about 14 or 15. That's not been agreed yet, so it's not definitely going to happen. We've got to get the funding agreed for that, but that's one of the things that we're looking at. And then we're also aware that there's a bit of an issue at the moment where somebody's under 18 and only has 3 days a week at college. So at the moment, there isn't any funding for those other 2 days in the week. And if parents work, obviously that can be really difficult. Once somebody becomes 18, we do have services that we can support people to access, but we're looking at how we can address this slight gap in our services in terms of those 3 days a week. And that is it for my update. So if anybody, I'll just stop sharing. So does anybody have any questions or anything they wanted to clarify? Either me or James can answer this bit. So James is here as well. Okay, if you think of anything while you're listening to the other 2 presentations, I'm very happy to answer questions later on in the session.
That's lovely, Naomi, thank you. We'll also, we can publicise about the request for carers to get involved in the Preparing for Adulthood Pathway review, if that would be useful for you as well. So we can put that out through the email network. Okay. Have we covered care needs assessment? We've had a question in the chat. Not specifically, and I don't think we're unlikely to do that during this session, but if you have any specific questions about it, we can take those and see if we can get them answered for you as well.
I was just going to say, was there a specific question about that that we can answer? No. Okay.
No. Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Naomi. Okay, so we will. When we are, so it's come up again, sorry, when we are contacted, do you mean in terms of frequency of contact? Can we, if you could pop a more specific question in, or if you're happy to say a more specific question, that'd be really helpful.
Okay, I think I understand what's being asked. If perhaps you could just say yes, if this is what you're asking. Are you asking at what age a young person and their family would be contacted in terms of looking at their assessment under the Care Act? Yeah. Okay. James, would you be able to answer that one?
Yes, I can. Yes. So we, as a team, we can accept referrals from the age of 14, but we, in reality, we won't become involved at that time. So we tend to allocate work for assessment, which is our 3 conversation approach that we do, anywhere between the age of 16.5 and before the 18th birthday. So it can vary depending on the complexity. So if somebody, for example, was a looked after child and requiring accommodation at 18, then we would allocate sooner than if it was somebody that was maybe looking for a direct payment to, get some support in the community to access groups, etc. So it can vary, but in terms of allocation of a worker from our team, it would be between the age of 16.5 up to 18th birthday at the moment, but ideally by 17.5 as the latest point to make sure we get that assessment work done and provision in place in time for 18th birthday.
So section H, we do input into the, we're asked to input into the EHC plans. So that will have been completed in discussion with the PFA team. That's right, isn't it, James? I know we used to do that when I was
Yeah, if we're involved, then we are asked to contribute towards that section, towards the EHC plan. And if we've got an allocated worker, then we'd expect that worker would attend the EHC review as well. Okay.
Welcome.
Great, thank you. Okay, any more questions for Naomi and James at this stage? No? Lovely. Okay, thank you very much. So I'm going to pass over to Claire next, and Claire is joining us as a parent carer to talk about her personal experiences going through transition. So welcome, Claire.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Claire, and I've got 2 sons. I know Louise. So I've got Jack, who's 23, and Tom, who's now 20. They both have a genetic life-limiting condition called Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And despite them having the same gene change, they are completely poles apart. So I've currently got Jack, who's studying 60 miles away from home with 24/7 care, currently doing a PhD. And then I've got Tom, who is currently at home with mum and dad, who currently is at Confetti College in Nottingham, and he's doing music related subjects. He still struggles with maths and English, and somehow he's managed to get onto music tech for next year. And I'm quite mindful that we've done quite well to have him still in education at 20. So my experience has been with transition. You talk about age 14 and transition services getting involved. They're not interested unless there's a piece of work for them to do. They don't even start initiating anything at all. And what I've written is, I will be positive as well. Outside of education, there's very little provision for young people with support into work or other meaningful activities. The expectations are that parents will backfill the gaps in provision, such as housing, care, support for work. My youngest son, Tom, is more complicated with his learning, as well as having a physical condition. So he has extremely limited opportunities. So he actually needs very creative thinking, which is why he's ended up at Confetti. My sons fall through the gaps completely. So the process itself, if I take Jack, because obviously I've done it once, so I got the wherewithal. His care team, I found out about from talking to other parents whose sons had gone to university, because when you talk to the local authority, it's like it's never happened before. But fortunately, we had an experienced social worker who had done it. So we use an agency called Ask Jules, and Jack essentially employs his carers directly, but they manage all his care around him. His transition, both my son's transition, has probably been successful from a care point of view, because they accessed services when they were children. So at the time, the local authority, I don't know what the situation is now, the local authority actually provided home care, and that worked fantastically because we had one member of staff and he supported me with getting the lads ready for school, college at the time. That equally got particularly Jack prepared to go to university and manage his own staff, telling them what his care needs were. I think often parents feel when they're children, they take on the responsibility for the care totally. In my experience, it's better to start introducing that as children. Tom, you don't get any information on what you should do. Some parents find it a shock that it's only 3 days at college and then you've got to fill the other 2 days. And I might add in here, Tom managed till year 8 in mainstream, and he actually attended a special school. And I can honestly say the support from the school was very little, other than having a bit of a marketplace like you do with your transitions to adulthood that you've held at Harvey Haddon, etc. But basically you learn from other parents that have been through it and experienced it. At the time, Tom, there was a transition specialist nurse. I think that job's gone. But she did manage to put me some information together to tell me things like you're exempt from paying for your prescriptions, things like consent for medical problems. The other things that we've had to deal with are things like power of attorney, so that, you know, we can make decisions for our young people. At 16, DLA moves to PIP. And in Tom's case, I'm his appointee. So you have to go through a detailed assessment for that. Nobody tells you what benefits they're entitled to. So we've had to navigate that. So Jack's gone away to university and, you know, we're still kind of supporting him with that. I mean, he's now 23, so he's virtually independent. As for Tom, I've got no idea what you're going to do with him, because he's probably going to be here with mum and dad. He's got a progressive life limiting condition. He shouldn't be here now if you follow the diagnosis, but he is. And he potentially might be here after I've gone. And I have no idea who's going to look after him, who's going to advocate for him. He's in a choir called Atmosphere Choir, which is for adults with a learning difficulty linked to Pulp Friction. And they've been fantastic in their support. And there's a group of 4 young ladies who are about to go into supported living. But it's taken that, it's not there yet, 7 years for that to be resolved. Yes, I know we've had COVID and everything else, but for Tom, he's got the only respite we access is Rainbow's Hospice, and that's till he's 25, and that's for a Monday to Friday break, 2 weekends for a whole year. In addition to that, we just get 22 nights from Win Hill. That's not ideal. It's a centre, it's local authority. It's primarily for young people with a learning disability. Tom is engaging. If you met him now, he'd make you laugh. We always say you've had a Tom tonic. He's quite chatty. And he basically makes friends with the staff, because obviously the other people accessing the service can't fully communicate with Tom. So it is quite tricky. I have to be fairly positive about it, because if Tom finds out that I'm not 100% satisfied with something, then I'm going to have a hell of a game in him accessing any respite at all. The other issue that we have, which most folk will nod, is when you try to recruit carers. How on earth do you recruit care staff when you're on the national living wage and other aged care agencies pay significantly more than that? It's really hard work. We have solo support. They did job advert. That was a waste of time. It took 6 months to recruit a new PA. And the PA that we've got is his ex-reception school teacher's husband, who we've fallen lucky with, who's obsessed with sport and used to work with adults with a learning difficulty. So it feels like we've managed to manoeuvre that. Tom also accesses a care agency. I had to ring 22 agencies to find somebody before we could find somebody appropriate. A lot of them said, we can't assess him until he's 18. That's no good to me. Tom needs 24-hour care and I needed some continuity. This is the reality. This is what it's like. During COVID, we had no carers for 6 months. So my concerns are, without me here, still fighting, even more so, what would happen to my 2 sons? And thankfully, I will say, they are both well-rounded individuals. they're happy, they're content, and they're fulfilled. But I do have major concerns about what's going to happen to Tom when he finishes college. How am I going to fill his time? What am I going to do? You've got services called things like space inclusion. They can't even accommodate Tom because they haven't got a change in places toilet or access to a hoist. So I'm stuck. You know, he can't access generic services without dedicated one-to-one support. But I am thankful that, you know, they are living fulfilled life. And with Jack, yes, he's aspired, he's fantastic. He's just been offered some work as well from one of his placements. But what happens to him when he finishes university? Where's he going to live? I have no idea. I haven't got the money, the resources to do it. And he's living his best life because of me. And as for services being called the adult care team, living well. Yes, those mass majority, yeah, my boys are, but that's because of all the hard work and the dedication that's gone into them. And it's exhausting. And I'm afraid to say it's worse when they get to adults, because if you access as many services as I do, even health isn't properly coordinated. You know, I'm constantly on it. And my biggest bugbear since COVID is you can never speak to anybody on the phone anymore. It has to be done by email. And then it's a responsive, it'll take 3 to 5 working days. So then you've got to mentally make a note, I need to keep an eye on that. Yeah, it continues. But I am fortunate to have 2 young men that I wouldn't be without, who are okay at the moment. Touch wood. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. And thank you for sharing that. Has anybody got any questions for Claire about her experience? Or is there anything, Claire, that you would, to sum up, say, what would your top tips be?
Don't assume people are going to tell you. Do your research. Don't take no for an answer. And I think you just, you know, I try to work with people from both sides, and I try to get people on my side, because I know shouting, chanting and ranting doesn't work. You have to get people on your side so they'll do the best for you. And I'd seriously like people to say, I'd seriously like people to say to me if they cannot provide something, because I know what the situation is within services. They're underfunded, they're overstretched. So please be honest with us if you can't provide something. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Catherine, would you like to ask something or join in?
Join in, really, if that's
Lovely,
okay.
thank
Let me
you.
just take my hand down. Yeah, I've supported different people, Claire, with transitioning from children's to adult services. And I've done the same with my son. And I think it can feel a bit like a precipice where you lose your paediatrician if your child has health concerns, and physio and OTs are much more difficult to resource. And what seems to happen is that a promoting independence worker is put in place for a few weeks, up to 12 weeks, and they make an assessment. So somebody with ASD, for instance, is shown how to make their bed. They make the bed, but of course, they won't make the bed when nobody's there to remind them to make the bed. And then you have to fight to get a proper care and support assessment of need. And some families don't know how to do that. So I think what would be useful for people transitioning is something that's available on the website for Notts County Council that informs people what their rights are and what's needed, and what the entitlement is really for a proper care and support assessment.
I think going on from that, Catherine, it's really important that parents get into how many hours of support that young person needs. and what that would look like. Because when you go through the carers assessment, that's basically what they ask you is how many hours do you want? And
And
actually,
then
it's not
and-
about that. It's about what are their needs and how
Yes.
can we meet them.
yes,
Um,
and all won't be met by
No.
the family member, because you have a life, you may work, you may need respite yourself. And I think it's people understanding what respite they're entitled to and making that jump from children's services to adult services. I think there could be a lot more information out there for people to assist them with that, probably both in health and in social care. And we all understand the constraints that social care workers have, but it's that honest dialogue, isn't it? I think that you're asking for. So for instance, if somebody is in education up to post 18, if they're 3 days a week there, they could be attending a day service for the other 2 days, but people won't necessarily ask for that and it won't necessarily be offered. So I think there's a big gap there, and it could be filled with the right information being put out there to support carers. You don't know what you don't know.
and also you're about to close 2 in the county.
Who
Clifton
are being closed?
and Wilford.
I mean, I do work for a charity and we run day services. But
We're
I
all
understand-
supported by charities.
Yes,
It's the other thing, yeah.
Lovely. Thank you both very
Yeah.
much. I'm sure more things will follow throughout this conversation as well, but I'm going to hand over to Louise now, who is also a parent carer who's agreed to share her experiences with us this afternoon. So hi Louise and welcome.
Hello, thank you. I've got 3 children. I have identical twins, Bethany and Jasmine, who are 20, who have a genetic condition called TUB-A1A, as well as epilepsy and other things, and a 12 and a 13-year-old boy who's just broke his arm. With the girls with a genetic condition, we didn't get diagnosis until there was 12. So it's always been like a cerebral palsy type disability with things added in. So it's always been a guessing game. We had children's services. We used to have children's home care 5 mornings a week and 2 evenings. The girls attended holiday and Saturday clubs. We had home from home respite for 48 nights a year, which the girls absolutely loved. They adored their care workers whose houses I went to. They took them out and just had an absolute fantastic time. Had 2 workers with direct payments. We had 5 hours a week and school, which they've loved. And then they turned 18 on a Saturday and I was left with 1 person who was my best friend, who was one of my direct payment workers. I had no morning support, no respite, just 1 worker who worked on a Wednesday, and it was just like falling off a cliff. Monday came and I was like, oh, that's it. It's done. I ended up having an emergency start team, the team who come to your house when you've had a stroke in hospital, because there's no facilities or anything for 18-year-olds. It's all older people who have care, who use care companies. The start team was diabolical. After the first day, the manager phoned me up and told me that they don't do feeding, they don't do this, they don't do that. You've got to feed them, you've got to do that, and then we'll come in and do 20 minutes. Ended up emailing Naomi, apologising for having disabled children and causing a nuisance to the system. And Naomi sent a lovely email apologising, kicked the manager up the arse, and then I had another meeting with the start team. They sent 2 workers in who were fantastic, who'd got experience with special needs children, because they are still children at 18. And they took over until I had another care team come in who was responsive care. A few hiccups with them, because obviously you're fitting in to the more elderly people who require care, who are very meds dependent, been in the system for years. So trying to find somebody to slot you in, and with having twins who required care, we needed 2 people. But we did get a lovely team come in, and then they got pulled with immediate effect just before Christmas. And then we had another emergency team in who turned up at 10 o'clock when the girls were at college at 9. So like brilliant. So I had 2 weeks of and then a different team came here in who were absolutely amazing. Love the girls love them. And they took over for about 6 to 8 weeks before we had foster care take over, who are the council go-to community carers, who you'll probably hear rumours about them, and they are true. They were terrible when they started, but eventually we've got a bit of a good team, good times, and a routine. So they're on the level now. With the respite, my Wednesday worker, she took Jasmine on in respite. So she had her on a Tuesday night, worked out she got 42 nights a year. And she had her on occasional Saturdays. I couldn't get anywhere for Bethany. And we ended up going to Hemsley Road at Rainworth. Had a absolutely terrible experience there, and Bethany was reported to the police for assault, which was dropped because she's not got mental capacity. So obviously pulled her out of there straight away. So she had eight weeks of respite in that first year. Eventually I've got them both in at Hollis Street at Worksop, and they love it. And apart from you've got to take them over to Worksop, so it's a bit of a to-in and fro-in, and they don't get transport to college if we're at college. So they either have to miss college, or I have to go back and forth to Worksop, which is half an hour. Positive things. As direct payments, actually, I've just had an increase from as 5 hours up into 16.25 hours each week. Which has now enabled me to get some more workers, and I've got a good team at the moment. But like Claire said, finding carers is so difficult. I rely on the power of Facebook and friends knowing friends and passing it on, which is how I've got the 2 new workers in. The girls go to Portland College, which they should be leaving next month. The EHCs are being seized, which I'm appealing because they're thriving at college, they love college, and I don't see why they shouldn't continue the education because it is the best thing for them. But you have to wait for it to be ceased to be able to appeal it. The girls go to Mansfield Day Services on the other 2 days. We have been on the waiting list for 2 years supporting College Day Services, and we're still nowhere near on the list. Bethany now has a one-to-one at Day Services because she's had quite a few issues, a lot brought on by transition, the anxiety of what happened at respite, the complete change in everything. As she had anxiety behavioural issues before, but it really heightened everything. I've just been to see a psychiatrist for her, and our support from a mental health nurse and a learning disability team has been absolutely brilliant. Much better mental health support than what we had in children's. And she came round, she's got plans sorted, she got us in touch with a psychiatry, she got me a sensory OT who's visited, which scarce in children's. Claire mentioned about getting power of attorney because the girls don't have capacity, you have to go through Court of Protection, which I started when I was 18, it's still going through. And you have to go through a solicitor for it, and it has to be passed in the courts. So it's just a very long process and drawn out. And another thing what we've had to do, because we've not got mental capacity to say yes and no, is doing your deprivation of liberty assessments, which is Dole's assessment. Jasmine has a clasp on a wheelchair, what you have to open with a pen, because she's in, out, and she can get out of the car and fall over. But we had to do a Dole's assessment for day centre. College was okay for it because it is depriving her liberty. We've just had to have another one because she needs ankle straps on a chair. And it's all these little hurdles of what you, yeah, it's fine, but no, because you're an adult, you have to do extra paperwork and research on them. That's about it.
Lovely, thank you, Louise. Thank you for sharing your experiences as well. In the same ways I asked after Claire's, if anyone's got any questions for Louise or would like to contribute a point to that, then please do so. But Louise, what would you advise for a parent who is approaching that transition age? What would you advise them to bear in mind, or top tips?
Top tips. I've just seen that Claire's put about the financial assessment on it. And nobody told you about financial sides, because if you've got over 23, if they have over 23,500 in savings, you have to pay towards care. And we always saved the girls' child trust funds. And luckily it was a really good trust fund. But we are doing adaptations on the house, and we are putting that money towards adaptations, so we didn't get penalised on as care support that way. I'd advise going to as many groups, join as many forums as what you can. Other parents is the biggest source of information, because you are told nothing, and it's the same as in children's. I don't think I've officially really been told a handful of things. It's potluck if you get a good social worker. We just had a really good one who, she was like, oh no, you can use this to that and do that, and really knew her stuff. But the two previous ones, we're on his fourth one now since turning into adults. Two previous ones were no use, basically. So just listen to other parents and forums.
Can I also add that I've gone to my local carers group, and you know what I'm going to say. I was the only person there looking after adult children. Everybody else is OAPs, dementia, or looking after husbands that unfortunately have been diagnosed with Parkinson's or something like that. So even those groups are extremely alienating. Yeah, it's tricky. And can I just say, Louise, because lots of people don't say it, you do a fantastic job with your two young ladies.
Thank you, you too. It is like the thing at day centre where they go to, it's Mansfield Day Services, it's 18 up until death, basically. Yeah. So when the girls are 18 and started there, they're hanging around with 80-year-old men with Alzheimer's. There's very limited services, day centres, who have the facilities, like Claire said, of changing. And I don't understand how there can be special needs centres when they don't cater for all special needs.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. Naomi.
Yeah, hi, just thank you very much for sharing your stories. Sort of just a few reflections, and then hopefully a bit of advice for people that are about to embark on that process. So, you know, sorry that you've both had lots of challenges. I'm glad there have been positives as well, and that you've had some positive input from some social workers. That's good to hear. We know that we're not doing things as well as we could be. That's why we've got quite a lot of focus on this at the moment. It's a real priority in terms of adult social care, is to try and get our preparing for adulthood process right. And that's some of the stuff that I was talking about at the beginning. In terms of the age aspect, so preparing for adulthood or transitions, there were two words used for the same thing, is a responsibility of all organisations. So whilst we don't have the resources to work with individuals, we just haven't got a big enough team, enough resources to allocate to everybody that's 14. We do have link workers with schools, and we are working with schools so that we have information about people that are coming through. So that's one thing that we're trying to do more consistently in terms of working with schools. I was just going to say to Claire that there's a group called the Parent Carers Foundation, which you may or may not know about, and they do definitely have people in there who have got children and adult people. I think Louise knows about them, if you know Louise, so you might want to exchange information about that. And then the other thing was just about accommodation. That was a point that's been made a couple of times. So we do have a range of accommodation that we don't own any accommodation as a local authority, apart from some of the short break services and the day services. We don't own any long-term accommodation, but we can refer people to either supported living or residential care. In terms of the models, supported living is designed to support people to maximise their independence, to do as much for themselves as they possibly can, but it does have 24-hour staffing support, so you're not left on your own unless you're able to be. Residential care has a similar sort of ethos, but it does tend to be used more for people who need more doing for them, rather than people that can be supported to do things for themselves. So there is accommodation there, but obviously it's limited in terms of the supply of accommodation, in a similar way to Claire was saying about accessing staff in the community. I think you're probably all aware that social care generally has got an issue with recruitment at the moment. So all organisations are struggling to recruit carers, but there is accommodation there, and it would be a question of talking to a social worker. If you haven't got a social worker, making a referral to get a social worker, and they could talk to you about some of the options that might be available for your young person.
That is also one of the issues, Naomi. I've had some really good social workers, and you get allocated one. They do a piece of work and they discharge you. They should be the one doing the reviewing, because they've already met you, they know your family. And I've challenged, and we've had the same social worker for both young men, sorry, which makes sense. There's some continuity there.
Yeah, that is the model.
And we've had to have quite experienced social workers because of the complexity of what they've got.
Yeah.
We're even considering moving out of the house so staff can move in, but I don't know whether that's realistic or not. Because
we have got people that can talk to you about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So in terms of the social worker situation, so I can take that back. It's not something I have control over, unfortunately, in my role. I don't have control over the way that our social workers work, and at the moment it does tend to be a piece of work that's done and then closed, as you've said. But I can certainly feed back that that's not something that families are very keen on, so I'll do that.
Should there routinely be a review of the care package?
Yeah, should have an annual review.
Okay.
That's a statutory responsibility.
And I would expect, where possible, if obviously in PFA, you have a worker, and hopefully, unless that worker moves on, then they should remain with you. But obviously, that's only for a short period of time. But within the adult district team, I mean, good practice, I think, would be, if a worker has worked with family previously and knows the situation, it makes sense. So I think, that's certainly something we can take back there, isn't it, to district managers.
Thank you, Catherine.
I think it's also quite a good idea to ask for your carers review at the same time as the review for your family member, because the two do sort of work together. And I've had it where I've met somebody to support them with their carers review, but then they've got to do a review of their family member. And it would save Notts County Council a lot of time, I think, for them to be done at the same time. You know, I was told once when I've made a referral for a carers assessment that I needed to make sure that it was needed, because they'd have to wait another year if after that assessment. But of course, that's not the case. If somebody's needs change, then you don't have to wait a year. You can ask for a review more quickly than that. So I think it's important for people to know that as well, that just because you had one a year ago, if the circumstances have changed, then of course you can ask for another. But an example of a gentleman I referred, it took 15 weeks to get him an appointment for a social care worker to come out and do his assessment. And he was living in really dire circumstances. So you've really got to push things to get what you're entitled to, unfortunately. And, you know, we all understand that it's because Notts County Council are short-staffed, the same as lots of other places. You know, when you can't find care support staff, it's the same for the local authority as well. But you do have to shout quite loudly, unfortunately.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, so we're going to move to our next speaker now, with moving the focus slightly to what support is out there really for parent carers, especially going through this transition time. So we're going to go over to the Community Coaching Company. So hi, welcome. Have we got Maria? Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Maria. That's lovely to have you. Okay, very welcome, Maria. So Maria's going to tell you a little bit about her organisation and what they can offer in terms of support as well. So thank you.
Okay. I was asked to prepare a presentation, but I'm more than happy just to talk about what we do as an organisation, whichever you would prefer.
What's easier for you? If it's easier just to talk, then feel free.
I don't mind. We have both are available to you. I don't know if you've already covered the contents of navigating the process. So it's whichever you prefer, whichever the people here would prefer.
Any preference, anybody? Do you want to just talk to us then, Maria? And if you'd like to share the presentation, we can always put it up on the website.
Okay, I'll talk to you then.
Lovely.
So I will put up, I shall put up So we're the Community Coaching Company, and we're one of, obviously there are numerous support organisations around the county, and we are providing online support and real-time support to parents and carers. We are relatively small. We have 160 families in our community, and because we're small, we're able to be quite flexible, and we're able to respond very quickly to what people ask us to do. So we offer one-to-one online support, and we also run cuppers and chats throughout the county, and we run family activities, and we embed signposting and support into everything that we do. So the idea is just to connect people to one another, because that's where the wealth of information is. The wealth of information comes from lived experience generally, and from people doing their own research, and everybody's children have unique abilities, and everybody's had to therefore go through this journey to find the bespoke things that work for their family to help their children to reach their potential. So there's a wealth of experience within our organisation, and we will also do research for people. So our services are free. Some of the family activities are subsidised, so they'll have a low cost, but all our support and signposting is free, and it's all lived experience support. So that's what we offer. We have people can contact us, and they can be added to our WhatsApp groups. People can contact us to join in with our family activities, and they can contact us for one-to-one support sessions. So anybody have any questions for me, because we do all sorts of things.
Any questions for Maria? Maria, is it a specific area that you district that you support in?
Yes, we cover Nottingham and Nottinghamshire.
Okay, so anyone from within Nottinghamshire could get in touch and receive your wonderful support.
Absolutely.
Lovely.
Yeah, they'll get one of our team.
That's great. Thank you for that. The name of the organisation is the Community Coaching Company. That's just come up in the questions.
Yeah.
Community Coaching.
Let me see if I can share the screen with my little bit about us, and then people can take that as a screenshot if they like. Is that visible?
Yes.
That is CCC. Is that visible to people?
Yeah.
That's who we are.
So Maria, is your cut-off 25?
It is, our cut-off is 25. However, if there is a relationship with people who've been with us, it would seem harsh to cut them off. So it would be quite difficult, but yes, that is our cut-off at the moment. Yes, we work with children and young people. We have had young people in their early 20s as part of the group.
Lovely, thank you. Anyone got any other questions for Maria? That's great, Maria, thank you very much. And in the same way that I asked our two carers, do you have any top tips for families who are going through transition?
Oh, absolutely. So, you know, there's a load of helpful organisations. For a start, Core and Voice have a transitions toolkit online. Together for Short Lives have a transition toolkit. My Future Choices magazine by the Council for Disabled Children has transitions preparing for adult in it. My son would not be where he was without Brain in Hand app, which is like a personal assistant in your phone. And that has enabled him to do things that we didn't think would be possible in an independent living capacity, and uphill all the way, but he's currently now employed as a paramedic, and he has the Brain in Hand app funded by the paramedic service. So that just makes everything possible. It has all his OT in it, has his diary in it, it has maps in it, it has everything he might need to navigate life. Again, I mean, just so many support organisations out there. There's only a few listed here. The other thing is, I would say, you know, don't be afraid to approach people. So when we were trying to get my son to, you know, he would say, I've got my room just as I like it. Why would I leave it? Yeah, why would you ever leave it? You know, we were not afraid to approach people that he felt safe with to see if they would support him with a little bit of work experience, with a little bit of anything. And people were incredibly patient. And he had lots and lots of opportunities just by me and his team pushing people. Don't be afraid to think outside the box. We were told certain things weren't possible. And he said, I'm standing on the precipice of a chasm and there's no way across it. And I said, the chasm is very narrow and we will build a bridge. And we were very lucky to have a lot of support, but we had to do a lot of research. We had to find things that people told us didn't exist. And, you know, he was the person who was bleakest about his future. It was very important to look at what he didn't want and be really flexible, because his ideas would change. And it's quite scary when he decided what he did want to do, because then the onus was on me to make things happen. So yes, basically, don't ever give up. If you think it doesn't exist, you might not be right. And you just never know what's out there in terms of smaller organisations or local people who might be able to help your child, or might be able to help them just have some more of the skills that they need. Anything which is not the parent. You know, part of why I do what I do is that I looked after my children without thinking about what might happen if anything happened to me, and was wholly unprepared to be come out of hospital one day disabled, and you know, essential. You know, my children were completely unprepared for what walked through the door. It's absolutely essential to begin getting them used to other people, begin the tiny steps to training other people, anything which makes them a bit more bulletproof in their adult life. So yes, those are all my tips.
Thank you, Maria. Really, really valuable. Anyone got any additional questions or points for Maria? Thank you. We will share, if Maria, if you could send over your PowerPoint, we will make sure that gets shared as well, because there's some really useful organisations listed on there as well. We make sure that anything like that gets listed alongside the recording of the session, so people can have a look back, and people who are not here today can also access that brilliant information as well. So thank you ever so much for coming along this afternoon and sharing that with us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. We do have Debbie from Tuvida on the call as well, although she has said that her video and sound aren't working well for her this afternoon. So some of you will be aware that Tuvida are the current provider of carer support services in Nottinghamshire. So if you were to want some support as a parent carer, you can reach out to Tuvida, give them a call. They do have parent carer support groups running that people can access as well. And they also have information, advice and guidance available from one of their support workers if you were to give them a call there over at Tuvida. So we'll make sure that the links and things are online for Tuvida also. Does anyone else have any particular support groups or organisations that they are working with? Catherine mentioned her organisation, which is REACH, who work with people with learning disabilities. If there's anyone else who knows of any that are useful, Claire?
Yeah, so Tom's in Atmosphere Choir, which is linked to Pulp Friction, which again was set up by a parent because Jess wanted to work in a posh restaurant, Pizza Express. She enables independence and gives them work skills, and I've seen people go on to get employed in Marks and Spencer's in the food hall. They grow plant and veg, they do cookery. Potentially that's where Tom's going to go, but he physically can't do the things, but he'll have a chat to folk in the community cafe and bore them to death with Forest, etc. So that's my go-to, I think, after he finishes college.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Anybody else, any groups or organisations they've found particularly helpful? Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thank you ever so much, everybody who has contributed and shared their stories and their experiences this afternoon, and for the advice and things that we've had from others as well. As I said, everything will be shared on the website, and James will email everyone who's on our mailing list and put the links out on social media as well, so you'll know when it's there and you can have a look. The website is carersspace.nots.com. So you will be able to find everything from the session there. If you do have any further questions or any individual questions that you'd like us to try and get a response to, then please let us know, because we are happy to take questions or individual situations and see what we can find out for you, or what support could be put in place for you. And that's part of what Carer Space was set up for, so that carers can come and say, oh, I've got an issue accessing XYZ, can somebody look into that for us, or how can we make that work better? And as Naomi said when she was speaking, if anyone's interested in getting involved with the projects that they're doing over in the Preparing for Adulthood team as carers, as parent carers, obviously experts by experience, very valuable in those processes. So we'll make sure that any details you want to pass on to us, we can pass through to Naomi as well. Naomi?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Helen, if you do get any sort of individual queries coming through, if you want to direct them to me, I might not be the right person to answer them, but I can make sure they get to the right person. But I do work part-time, so if there's a little bit of a delay, then apologies for that in advance.
Fantastic, thank you for that, Naomi. No, that's great. So it's one of the purposes of this network is to have those connections, so we can get any questions or queries taken through to the right place and supported in the right way. So thank you for that. We're also at a point with Carers Space, as always, where if anyone's got anything they'd particularly like to see discussed or to have speakers contributing information about, then feel free again to let us know, and we'll make sure that it goes onto the list with our planning group as to what happens next and what we talk about next. So you're very welcome to get in touch. I'm going to hand over to James. James is just going to give you an update on where the carers strategy is currently up to. And we'll take any questions about that as well. So James, if you could do that for us.
Sure, thanks, Helen. Afternoon, everybody. Most of you may know that a new carer strategy has been in the works for 2023 to 2028 for Nottingham and Nottinghamshire. It's now been finished and is available to the public to look at. It's been developed by the City and County Council, the NHS, and a group of carers themselves that myself and Helen have been working with through co-production. So the carers have been involved right from the beginning of the process, actually helping to write the strategy from the ground up. And those carers are still involved now in actually working on the service specifications for the contracts that the services are bidding over to see who gets to take over and offer those services. I thought I might just share a couple of pages from it. Hopefully everybody can see that okay. So these are some of the key components of the strategy that carers and professionals have worked together to identify. And the strategy is organised in a way where a group of I and we statements have been created on those. So the I statements are what the carers have come up with in terms of what they would like to see, what the gold standard of a service would look like, covering each of those points. And then the service partners have come back and with we statements which talk about how they're going to try and meet those expectations, basically. So it's a really good, thorough document. And like I say, this is like the first stepping stone in the process of building the future services. So they'll be looking back at this and using it to inform their practice. So we'll make sure to share this on the Carer Space website and through the mailing list as always. And yeah, please take a look at it, because it's a really good piece of work, and a lot of carers are really passionate about making sure that services work for people going forward. So I just thought that it'd be nice to share that with everybody. And,
thank you,
yeah.
James. So yeah, feel free to have a look at that. It does include parent carers. It's not exclusively for carers of just adults, but it is parent carers as well. And the implementation work that's going on behind the scenes with it at the moment is including representatives from children's services in both city and county as well. So we are trying to look at the most joined up way of working through some of these processes for carers and some of the things that carers would need to see, with the idea being that it's a system-wide approach. So it's not just a case of the specialist carers services, but it's looking at everybody, every team taking responsibility for carers, both across health and social care. Okay, any questions about that from anyone, or anyone like to know more? Feel free to get in touch if you've got any questions, or if you read through it and want to know anything else, but we'll keep you updated on how it's all being implemented and what's happening around it as well through Carer Space. Okay.
Thanks, Helen and James. Because I know you've worked really hard to get this session together, so you should be really pleased with what you've achieved.
Thank you, Catherine. Absolutely. It's been really nice to have everybody together this afternoon to talk about some of these issues, and we do appreciate that there is work going on with the Preparing for Adulthood team in terms of thinking about what changes do need to be made. I know that might not be beneficial to those of you who have now been through that transition process, but hopefully with your help as well in feeding into what needs to change, that can make a big difference for people in the future as well. So
Absolutely.
we do really thank you for your time. Naomi.
Yes, sorry, can I just clarify? So the work that's going on is multi-agency work, so it's not just social care, it's education and health as well. So when we're talking about a pathway, we're looking to clarify all of the different processes within that. So it's quite a big piece of work, but it's across all of those three agencies.
That's brilliant. Thank you. That's all really, really good to hear. Okay, any final points or questions? Oh, Jacqueline's just asked how she gets on the mailing list. James, could you respond to that one for me?
Yeah, absolutely. If you just visit our homepage, carerspacenot.com, across the top there, there is a join the mailing list option, and then you just enter in a few details and you'll be signed up automatically.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Anything from anyone else before we finish? That's fantastic. A huge thank you to everybody, especially our speakers this afternoon. Been really grateful for you coming along and sharing your experiences and information with us. And yeah, the recording will be shared. So if there's any information, anything you've missed or you'd like to hear again, then you'll be able to do that as well. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.